Hey y'all, welcome back to another tutorial. For today's video, we are doing a double layer circle skirt, or I should say bubble skirt tutorial. So I'm super excited. This is what it looks like. This is what it looked like before I added the waistband. I'll have a finished product photo for y'all for part 2 of this. As you can see in the title, this is a 2-part video, so this is part 1. I hope y'all enjoyed this tutorial. If y'all have any questions, comments, anything like that, leave them below and let's get into the video. So we're going to start off by getting a few measurements. We're going to need our waist measurement, which is going to be the high waist. We're also going to get the low waist measurement, as well as the hip measurement, waist to hip, and then waist to floor. So we're going to be using these measurements to create our skirt. Basically, they're going to be super helpful for the length of the skirt as well as the waist measurements. Now, I created my lining wrong the first time that I did it. Honestly, first 2 times. So I'm going to explain to y'all the correct thing to do, or what I think will be best for this skirt method. So what we are going to do for this skirt is we are going to create A-line skirts and then add godets on the side seams for the lining. So the first thing you want to do is mark your waist measurement. Now my skirt is starting at the low waist, so I'm marking the low waist measurement, but if yours is high waist, then mark the high waist measurement. Next, you want to mark the low waist to hip measurement or waist to hip measurement. Next, using that waist to hip measurement or low waist to hip measurement as a guide, you want to go ahead and mark the hip measurement. Now we're creating the lining for the mini skirt first. So next you want to mark waist to end of skirt measurement. I believe I made mine 9 inches. I honestly could have made it a little longer, maybe like 3 inches or so longer, but you want to mark that length next. And using that measurement as a guide, you're going to mark where the hem of the garment is going to fall. And the next thing we're going to do is draw a line to mark the flare of the skirt. I made mine too narrow. So when creating the width of the bottom of your skirt, where that hem line is, go ahead and make that 5 inches longer than the hip measurement. And once that's done, you can go ahead and cut it out. This is a front pattern for our lining skirt. Now for the back of the skirt, we're basically going to do the same thing or use that same pattern piece. And we are going to line up our pattern piece with the open end of the fabric. All we want to do is just add an extra 1/2 inch at the back for seam allowance. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for the second layer of our bubble skirt, but I want you to make sure whatever length you put for this skirt, that is 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches shorter than what you want the actual skirt length to be, because the gathering on the outer layer will make the skirt longer than the lining. Also, add an extra 1/2 inch to the waist and hip measurement since we'll be adding a slit. Also, I know you can see me using a curved ruler in this. Don't use a curved ruler for yours because I couldn't find my straight ruler. And lastly, for the width of the hem of the garment, make that measurement be about 8 to 10 inches longer than what the hip measurement is. And you're going to use that same piece to create the back as well. So now I want the second layer of my skirt to have a slit, so that's the next thing that we are going to create in our lining. Basically, I'm going to unfold the front skirt lining, and then wherever I desire to have my slit, I am going to put a fold there. When I create this fold, I want to make sure the top of the fabric is completely aligned with the rest of the waistline. So it should look something like this. Now put a few pins to hold the fold in place and then cut the slit. Next, we need to create our godets. For the longer skirt, we want that to be about 10 to 15 inches wide, meaning it would be 5 to 7.5 inches wide on the fold. Now, another good way of making sure the width is something that you like is when we create this outer layer of our skirt, you can gather the outer layer of the skirt first, measure it, and then however much excess fabric is needed, like subtract the length of the current A-line skirt lining, you can just go ahead and create the godets to be the same size of what's left over, if that makes sense. Also, you want to make sure the length of the godets is the same length of the side seams of your skirt. Once you're done creating the shape of the godet, cut out 2 of those and recreate this exact same process for the godets that go on our shorter skirt. Once that's done, go ahead and sew the godets to the side seams. And after that, sew up the center back seam, leaving enough space for a zipper. Now it's time to create the outer layer. This part is really simple. We are basically just creating 2 circle skirts. Now, before we start to work on the pattern, if your fabric doesn't have a defined fold, go ahead and iron the fold in place. That way it's easier to create the pattern. On the fold of the fabric, we're marking the length of our shorter circle skirt, then the diameter of the waist, and then again, the length of the shorter circle skirt. So your fold should look like it's broken down into 3 sections. Now, we're working on the outer layer. So when picking the length of the outer layer of your circle skirt, you want it to be 7 to 10 inches longer than the lining. And to get the waist measurement, you want to take the waist measurement and divide that by pi, or 6.28. If you want the waist to be fuller and have some gathering or pleating there, add a few extra inches and still divide that number by 6.28. Whatever number you get, you want to first multiply that by 2. That is going to be our diameter for our waist. Then you want to mark the actual number you got. So that is going to represent the midpoint of the waist. So now we want to create that inner circle, and that's going to be done by using our number that we got, the radius, which is whatever number you got that was divided by 6.28. That's your radius. Now, starting at that midpoint, you want to draw a vertical line going outwards away from the fold, and you want to mark where the radius is. Now, keeping the edge of your ruler that is closer towards you, closer towards your body, you want to only move the outer end of your ruler or measuring tape and keep marking that radius every inch or so. You want to keep marking it. As you do this, you should start to see a half circle form as you move this measuring tape or ruler around and you continue to mark that same number. This is an example of what you should see once you finish drawing that inner circle. Once that's done, now we're going to draw that outer line, which is actually the width of our skirt. So whatever number you got for that first number that we mentioned when we said you want to take the length of your lining and add about 7 to 10 inches to that, whatever number you chose, I think I chose maybe 18 inches for mine. You want to mark 18 inches from the edge of our half circle, that inner circle skirt, that inner circle that we just created. You want to literally keep taking your measuring tape and moving it around the fabric, keeping it in a straight line, as you can see, like I'm doing in the video. And you want to mark, with each mark you put, you want to mark it however many inches, whatever that number is for you. Like I said, my number was 18. You want to mark 18 inches from your inner circle that we just created. Now, go ahead, pin that in place, and cut everything out. Once you cut both lines that you drew, you should have something like this. Next, we want to cut out our crinoline for that shorter skirt that we just made. And we're going to just take that exact pattern, fold our crinoline in half, place the pattern on top, and then cut it out. Now, go ahead and unfold both the crinoline and our outer layer fabric, and we're going to lay them on top of each other and pin them together. For this part, make sure your pins are about 6 inches or so apart in the inner circle, and then maybe a little farther apart for the outer circle. But now we are going to do a top stitch on our machine, basically sewing the crinoline and our fabric together. Now, before we start sewing, I am going to show you how we're going to cut that longer skirt layer. Now, clearly the fabric is too long to cut on the fold the same way that we did last time. So what we are actually going to do is still fold our fabric, but fold it against the width of the fabric instead of the length. So this time when we make those markings, instead of making the markings starting off on the edge of a fold, we're marking it on the edge of the fabric. And also, because we're doing that, this is actually going to end up being 2 half circle skirts instead of 1 circle skirt for the bottom layer. Now, when you fold this fabric, you want to make sure it's long enough for the full length of the skirt. So I believe I made mine 51 inches. And then also long enough for the radius times 2, which is that waist measurement I mentioned earlier. And then again, the length of the skirt. So 51 plus 51, and I believe my radius times 2, which is also the diameter, that was 12.5 for me. So I would basically add those numbers up, and the total will come up to about 114.5 inches. So I would need to make sure that when I create this fold in my fabric, that the front half is at least longer than 114.5 inches, and so is the back half. So as you can see on camera, I'm measuring right now. All I'm measuring right now is that length, so I can make sure this is wide enough or long enough before I start marking and cutting. Now, since we're working with a lot more fabric this time, I definitely recommend pinning that edge together. That way it doesn't move too much. So now over the next few clips, all you're going to see me do is doing the exact same thing we did the first time. It's literally the same steps. So I'm first marking the waist, and I'm marking that inner circle. Then I'm going to go ahead and mark our outer circle, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut everything out. Also, make sure you use those pieces to cut out the crinoline too. And like I mentioned earlier, now we are going to sew these 2 layers together. We're sewing along the edge at 1/4 inch on your largest stitch. This is what you should have when you finish sewing both layers together. And this is how it'll look when you do the same thing for our outer layer or our longer skirt. You should have 2 of these. That is how it looks on the front, and this is how it looks on the inside. Now next, we need a zipper opening for that shorter skirt. So we're going to fold our fabric and cut along that fold. And now you want to do the same thing we did earlier, and you want to do another top stitch along the edge of the fabric where we just made those cuts. Now it's time for us to gather the ends of our skirt. So I am doing this by hand because my machine does not gather by machine really well. So all I'm doing is threading my needle, and I'm creating large stitches, and I'm sewing through the entire edge or hem, like the lower edge of our skirt. As I'm doing this, I am basically sewing like a nice amount of stitches, and then I am pulling my string to actually gather the fabric. I'm pulling the thread and basically pulling the fabric down the thread to give it this scrunchy type of look. Now for the waistline, I added a few more inches so that way I could be able to gather my waist just a tiny bit. So I'm doing the same thing in the waistline also. Okay, so this is what we have so far. This is a sports themed dress, so I will be adding patches to it, but I am loving it. Now we can go ahead and repeat that same step to our longer skirt. Now, once you're done, the bottom of your skirts should look a little bit like this, or not a little bit, it should look exactly like this. Now take this to the machine and sew your center back seam of your longer skirt together. Hey y'all, I know you're enjoying this tutorial and we're about to get right back into the video, but I wanted to take a moment to personally invite you to my couture draping course. I designed this course for the designers who already have a great foundation. You know how to cut, you know how to sew, you know how to create, but you are ready to take your designs to the next level and actually start creating some couture garments. You want to be able to create the things with volume and structure and all these different things. Now, in this course, we have different types of projects available. We have some that will show you how to drape a garment from start to finish, and then we also have some that are going to just focus on the techniques only. That way you can really get a good mix of everything you need. Normally, enrollment is $500, but if you're watching this video, you will be able to get this course for a discount. So at checkout, enter the code ESC tutorial and you'll be able to get this course for $350. And yes, we have payment plans available too. So if you're serious about becoming a better designer, you want to grow your craft, you want to see your skills improve, and you want to get results like my students who've been able to create garments like this just from being in my program for a matter of weeks, then go ahead, click the link in the description, and I can't wait to see what you create. Now, let's get back to the video. All right, y'all. So as you can see, this video is getting pretty long, so we're going to stop right here, and I'll be posting part 2 of this tutorial by this weekend. So make sure you come back, and I'll see y'all later. Bye, y'all.